So you're most famous for Monash for having lunch with Warren Buffett, and you underwrote a third of the cost of that lunch, $250,000. Now, it was a little while ago when $250,000 was worth more than it is today. You're a wealthy guy and were even then, but it's like an expensive lunch. What did you hope to get out of it? And obviously, it's been worth much more than $250,000 to you, but what's the moral of that? What should we take away? What should we learn from that?
I mean, a phrase that has just stayed with me so often, which is slightly unrelated, but maybe I'll find a way to make it related, is if you want an adventure, tell the truth. And I think that in this case, it's not so. In this case, if you want your life to be an adventure, if you want to live an interesting life, pick up those low-cost lottery tickets, and actually even that you could argue that was not a low-cost lottery ticket. It was actually a pretty expensive lottery ticket.
Pretty expensive.
But if you can afford it, and I remember on an Israeli interviewer asking me, so, how do you decide to invest in a lunch? And I said, look, you probably don't want to do it if it's more than 5% of your net worth, or probably even less, but pick up those lottery tickets because you live a more interesting life. And actually, if I stop and think about it with you right now, so there was a huge element of that was just saying, there are people who spend more money on a motor car. And what's the motor car going to get you? It's going to get you a few nice drives. It's going to get you a little bit of envy. It's going to get you some nice experience. I'm not saying it's a terrible thing, but the range of outcomes and the possibilities that unfold for your life when you go and have lunch with Warren Buffett are way beyond. So you have a huge, so from the car enthusiast's perspective, you're not going to get all those wonderful drives in that car. So they could say that the downside is less protected because it really gets one stupid lunch, and how long could the lunch last? But the upside is far more likely to be infinite in the lunch case. So why not pick up that lottery ticket if you can afford it? And actually, why not pick up a lot more lottery tickets? I think there's a book or a movie or something, The Year of Saying Yes. It's my year of saying yes. In a certain way, that's saying pick up the lottery tickets. There's so many lottery tickets that are offered to us, and we just have to be smart about them. So, I don't think that the thrill of jumping off a cliff in a wingsuit is worth the downside, which is a great big fat zero. And I think that many of us probably, even in the financial markets, pick up those kinds of lottery tickets. But if you can see that the downside is totally affordable and limited, why not get more of those things that are unlimited upside? So I think that's an enormous lesson. And to put that into more specific terms, if I know that somebody's interesting, or I've met somebody who's interesting, or where I kind of get the feeling that there's potential there for something, it's okay to travel across the planet to see them, even just for dinner. And I actually did that. Based on that reasoning, I flew basically to California from Zurich to celebrate a friend's birthday because I knew it would be a special event. And that is not a dumb thing to do. Because you're putting yourself in the presence of potentiality, which creates all sorts of other things. And so I think that's just an enormous, enormous lesson for me. And what's also very interesting is that Monash saw that and I didn't. He needed to spell it out for me. And when he spelled it out for me, I saw it. And I think that there was an element of me that wanted to have the adventure if there was an adventure. And in a certain way, I got doing that would get me the adventure with Monash anyway. And so, and I've said this, that the just meeting Warren Buffett and the things that happened subsequently was certainly transformative for me. But that whole experience would have been transformative for me if none of the things around Warren Buffett would have happened and just the things around Monash would have happened. And in the case with Monash, it's not just that I met all sorts of interesting people. It's that I completely reconfigured my business based on what the conversations that I was having with him. And the biggest change for me in moving to Zurich was that I could make a clean break with what I'd been doing in the past, which was some kind of New York hedge fund model, and do a very, very different model for running my business. So I feel like my father certainly taught me an enormous amount, but Monash has taught me an equally enormous amount about how to run a business in a way that's fun and interesting and makes sense. And then, with Warren Buffett, I mean, I think that, and I can dive in as much as you like, Steve, but one of the, so somebody says, well, you can go to the Berkshire Hathaway meeting and be in the same room as him. And that's absolutely right.
Well, you barely see him. You're that far away.
With all 50,000 of mine and Warren's closest friends, it's still a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing. But I think that being in the room with Warren for those 3 and something hours helped me to grow in ways that I didn't want to grow, and I think that I've been seeing this in all sorts of relationships where we want to grow without the pain, but actually spiritual growth, most of the time happens when there's pain involved. And I actually think that a healthy marital relationship and also a healthy relationship with our children involves friction and pain. It's not supposed to be harmonious. If it's harmonious the whole time, we're not actually growing as individuals. And so the pain for me being around Warren was, first of all, was just, I don't think that my mind will ever have as high a clock speed as Warren's does. And I think there is an element that when you're with somebody who's far younger and far less experienced than you are, then you can appear to have a higher clock speed to that person. You can appear to be more intelligent than you really are because there's this sort of difference of perspective. And I like to tell younger people all the time, you think I'm smart. It's not. It's just that you don't have the experience that I do. But I think that I can correct for that. And even if you take that into account, he has a mind that has an extraordinarily high clock speed. Really exhilarating to be around. And I'd leap at the opportunity to spend more time around it, one-on-one. But it's not happening. Or maybe it does. Who knows what happens? I'm hankering after. I did a project where we hypothetically looked at what it would take to get IKEA to sell itself to Berkshire Hathaway, and my sole goal was I knew that if ever I had a hand in helping a deal like that to happen, Warren would take me for lunch one more time happily. I'm sure he would, but so just out of the interest of getting the lunch. But so being in the presence, and I think that what's really hard is, and I guess I should remember, Steve, that we're talking to an audience. It's I as I've kind of progressed to where I am right now, never, if I could tell a couple of things to the person I was 20 years younger, is that I'd say, Guy, you have no understanding of how limited how limited the time is of some of the people that you adulate. And if you want to get into their lives, you really have to learn how to respect their time. And there are all sorts of techniques for doing that. Yeah, I was going to make a second point about talking to my 20-year-old self, but it's this, that if you're an ambitious person and don't think that these highly successful people are versions of your friends who won the lottery ticket. There may be a lottery ticket aspect to it. They may have won the ovarian lottery, they may have come across, but there are also personalities that have learned to project themselves in the world a certain way and use the world in a certain way. And whatever they've got is actually very, very rare. And so investing the resources to be in the same room as them, because you can learn from that, simply being in the room with them, makes an enormous amount of sense. And so, take the time, and yes, being with Warren and me and 50,000 of our friends is not the same as being just in the room with Warren, but it's still worthwhile doing that. It's still worthwhile if that person resonates, flying 12 hours just to celebrate a birthday with them or just to go and have a lunch. I actually, in a couple of weeks' time, will go to India with Monish for a couple of days. And really, it's just to spend one day in the presence of a few people who have an extraordinary business. And so, yeah, I've learned from that, and it reinforced that in me, if you like. So you've been to California, you're going to India, anything else that you've splashed out on? So investing large resources into being in the presence of somebody, I really don't think I've done it enough, actually, and nothing comes to mind right now. I think that what in a more general sense, we can put all of that into the bucket of investing in one's psychological, intellectual, and social capital. And actually, it's funny because in London, there's a kind of a slightly different perspective on it. I think that there are a lot of people in London or in the UK, especially some of the people that I either am friends with or was friends with, who are doing it in a kind of the British social structure class system. I don't want to necessarily dive into that rabbit hole, but there's a certain element of that which is kind of pointless. And I think that it's hard to it's harder for me in London to distinguish between the two. And I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about recently there was the coronation of now King Charles. So I've joked with people and said, Steve, I didn't see you at the coronation. Where were you? You know, it's really fun to say that in London because there are at least some of the people who they do a double take because they get the first reaction is, no, the guy wasn't there. He's just messing with me. They go, was he there and I wasn't?
But they know you were at Berkshire Hathaway meeting.
They should know, but they don't even, they wouldn't, many of these people wouldn't know what the Berkshire Hathaway meeting was. But I would give you an example recently, and I can't remember, I can't remember exactly in what context it was, but somebody that you're probably aware of, Nick Sleep, invited me to join him at Goodwood. He loves racing cars. So, you know, I made the special effort, flew back to London a couple of days before my
Nick,
son's...
I'm available.
It doesn't seem like Nick does podcasts. I would tell you that it's Nick and Case. Case is a genius mathematician. He's, as best I can tell, a supporter of the London Mathematical Institute. There's a guy called Ole Peters at the London Mathematical Institute who's very worth... I've not met him in person, but... yeah, so I went and spent time there. And here's something that's also interesting is that, I mean, I explained to my children, the reason why you go to a wedding is because you just want to be at the event. So you can build your relationship with people at the wedding, even if you don't talk to them. And so, you know, what I did at Goodwood is that I said hello to Nick's wife for like 2 minutes, and we all watched him racing around the track, which was kind of pretty fun, but it wasn't more than that. But I know that next time I'm with Nick, that experience will kind of inform. And actually, funnily enough, if I stop and think about it, we share an interest in cycling. And so he talked to me about this thing, Tour de Force, where you cycle on the route of the Tour de France, either a few weeks before or after. I don't remember exactly when. Very tough cycling for me. I couldn't even finish one of the full days that the Tour de France cyclists do. So I was taking a bus. But Nick couldn't be there that year for some reason or another. But it's okay because we kind of share the experience that we both around the same people and did the same kinds of things. So there are all sorts of ways to do it. And it's something that, get yourself into the environment that activates all those things for you. And often that's just being around the right people.
And you said that the Buffett lunch helped you to grow in ways you didn't want to. I mean, what sort of things?
Yeah, I mean, no, that very, very
And
specific.
How did he do that? How did he exert that influence?
I still could not put to bed the idea that maybe if I just focused on the right things, did the right work, was actually as good as Warren Buffett. And so, the experience of being at lunch with him forced me to grow in that way, forced me to accept that that wasn't the case, forced me to put that to bed. Didn't allow me, I would have had to be in total denial and drinking Kool-Aid to be walking around afterwards thinking that I could be some version of Warren Buffett. And of course, there's pain associated with that. But once I'd put that pain to bed and accepted it, it freed me up to focus on what I really could do, which is to live Guy Spier's best possible life. And I think that when you have a hero, that's really, really hard. I think it's also probably, I'm the father of teenage children, the feeling that you can't have your child live the best possible life that you would like for them to lead. You have to let them become the best possible person that they want to be. And that's still a lesson that I'm learning with the help of all sorts of people. But
yes, my children don't listen to the podcast, so I don't need to worry about that. Now, you work on your own now without an analyst.
Yeah.
You said in the book your assistant sold his personal holdings in 2008.
Yeah.
Was that the right decision? And how do you find the time? Because you do a load of stuff. Like you've got Value X, you've got your own podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you fit it all in? And why is it better to be on your own? Having somebody else to bounce ideas off. Of course, you've got Monish,
yeah.
I suppose. But.
Well, the thing is, it doesn't help if all Monish wants to talk about is Turkey, and I've kind of written Turkey off for one reason or another. So then, so in that case, certainly one needs more than one relationship to talk to people, to talk to about. And Monish has plenty of relationships in addition to me, and I think that's a good thing. So I would say that getting into doing this 25 years ago, I remember I was single and people would meet me and they'd go, oh, wow. So now I'd been upgraded from vice president at Sleazy Investment Bank to, CEO, I guess you call it, managing partner. And at the time, in early 30s, late 20s in age, people were impressed with that. And then I kind of continued to say, well, I'm also the mail boy, the phone answerer, chief assistant, chief analyst, investor relations, whole bunch of things. And so I was asked this question. At that time, I think that I was spending well more than 50% of my time administering all sorts of things in the business because I was a kind of a one-man shop. So I think that I have more capacity to do other things because I have a team around me, an administrative team around me that helps me with those things. And to some degree, the other things that I do reflect things that I'm willing to do, but things that the team are interested in. So the team, we had a Value X event at Berkshire. They loved it. They loved organizing it. And I kind of said to them, look, I'd love if you come to the Berkshire Hathaway meeting, because I think you'll learn a lot. It's good training. And they'd much prefer to be involved in organizing a sort of an event like that than just being at the Berkshire Hathaway meeting. So to some degree, it's kind of allowing the team to do the things that they're interested in. And they enjoy doing that, and they enjoy... But it's true that it takes up a certain amount of my time. I think that when you have the investing style that I do, Warren Buffett said from time to time that he would have done better to have just snuck into the cinema and watched movies. And so the action that he took was probably counterproductive. And I think that based on the time that it took for me to administer my little business 25 years ago, I developed an investing style in which inaction is almost invariably the right thing to do. And what I focused on because of that inaction in terms of the business is to keep driving down the costs of investing with me. So that helps. I also, I think it's lovely to have people to bounce ideas off. And I think that if you have a partnership like Nick and Case, it's really, really lovely. And that seems to have worked really, really well for them. But I had the experience of, I don't want to talk to this person anymore because for one reason or another, I'm just not interested in what they have to say to me right now. But now they're an employee. I can't just say, get rid of them because I don't want to talk to them anymore. And so the experience around the analyst that I had in New York, he's a lovely, lovely guy, and he's a friend, and he was an investor in the fund for the longest time. The fraughtness of when it's not going right was, and I've seen investment partnerships. The Case and Nick one was a great one, but partnerships like that break up, and that's kind of like worse than a divorce. No, maybe it's not worse than a divorce, but it's a kind of a divorce. And so that's why I've chosen the path that I have. I would tell you that the more time I spend talking to smart investors, I think the better I am for it. And we work hard at ensuring that I do that. So I have, in addition to Monish, at least 10 people that I want to talk to more often than I do, if you like. And, if for the listener's interest, Steve and I met at Berkshire at a dinner, which, that dinner blew me away in terms of the knowledge around that table. I really, really enjoyed that. And if I could spend more time doing that, I don't think I need an analyst.